It's not too hard in today's day and age to say that we love Star Wars. I mean, it's been around for over 40 years. There's been more movies now than I have fingers, which is kind of weird because growing up there were always 3 movies, and now I'm going to need more fingers to keep track. And some of us love Star Wars with all our heart. Some of us make Star Wars an intimate part of our life and can't be separated from it, even if we used a crowbar or a hydro spanner, to be more Star Warsy. Well, for those of us who aren't completely, meshed in Star Wars, from birth to death, where everything we do is about it, we tend to know the major characters. I mean, right? Baby Yoda, Princess Leia, Darth Vader. We might recognize some secondary characters like good old Admiral Akbar here, or maybe we don't, and we have no idea who this is. Essentially, the deeper you get into Star Wars, the more obscure the characters get. They're sort of your top line of characters that most people in pop culture know, and as you pull back the layers, kind of like the layers of an onion or a Minoc, you will get deeper and deeper, and eventually you'll get to characters that you've never heard of and you swear aren't even in the movie. Well, this is similar to the action figures. There's been many, many action figures over the years, and much like the overall character selection of the movies, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, going from main characters to obscure characters to, again, characters that you probably think are not in the movie, and you might even be right. There's been a lot of action figures over the years. And there's been a few characters that have created a cult status among toy collectors, among the action figure buyers, because for different reasons they want them as a figure. And most of these characters are ones that are almost impossible to pick out in the movie, or at least recognize for your common everyday, fans, not the people that are obsessive compulsive of Star Wars, yours truly probably being one of them. And while we've had some fan choice figures over the years where fans get to vote on who they want, well, here are some figures that are extremely obscure but are huge with action figure collectors.
Away we go!
Alright, so first up on our list are the Tonika sisters. And Tonika sisters were actually a figure I just did a video to. You can see a link here. And after doing that video and seeing how many people commented that they had no idea who these characters are is really what inspired doing this video. So the Tonika sisters are 2 females that are in the Star Wars cantina, surrounded by lots of aliens and some gruff-looking spacemen. Well, why do fans want these characters so much? Well, obviously one reason is because they're attractive females wearing skin-tight outfits, but the other is because as action figure collectors, we like to collect sets, and one of the sets people like to collect are cantina aliens, because they want to build out dioramas showing all of them, showing the cantina in toy form. Well, the Tonika sisters have actually not been available to make as figures. I went into a much longer explanation in the video I linked earlier, but the quick 30-second, less than that version is that they never signed a contract for their likeness rights, and if figures were made on them, it would shine a spotlight on the fact that they don't have the contract, and this might actually be true of many other background figures. So, because of that, the Tonika sisters are banned for life from ever being action figures, and that is why fans really want them. We want what we can't have. Alright, next up, and speaking of obscure cantina characters, we have this guy. Yep, you're probably like, he's not in the movie. No, he is. He's the guy who tells Obi-Wan to talk to Chewbacca about getting off of Tatooine. His name is Bosek, and in addition to adding +3 to the ability of any ship that he pilots, he is a human in the cantina, and there's way more aliens than there are humans, and for that reason, he kind of stood out, especially because he has a little bit of screen time. But the big reason that fans wanted him as a toy, and he did eventually get a toy in the Power of the Jedi era, which is about 15 years ago. This video is being recorded in 2021. Well, one fan in particular, Adam Paulus, who runs 16bit.com and Galactic Hunter, and yes, this is not a picture of Adam Paulus, but that's because, much like great works of art or things in the museum, it is impossible to take a picture of Adam Paulus. There are no photos of him. It's almost like he doesn't exist. But he does. I've met him. He's actually a good friend of mine. So he used to campaign on his website doing a Q&A about how Bosek was such a lame character that he didn't deserve an action figure. And because of that, it started sort of an underground movement where fans started asking for him. And hey, sometimes lame makes you even cooler. All right, next up we have to go visit Cloud City and Bespin. Well, Bespin's the planet, Cloud City's the planet. When Lando and Leia are running from Cloud City at the end to evacuate, there's a guy in the background. This guy here. He's running in front of Leia and Lando for like a split second. His name is Wilro Hood, known as the Ice Cream Maker Guy. Why is he named the Ice Cream Maker Guy? Well, the thing that he's carrying in his hands as he flees Cloud City for his life is a 1970s style ice cream maker. It's an actual Hamilton Beach ice cream maker from the late 70s, early 80s, and it probably just looked like a cool Star Warsian prop, and somebody handed it to an extra and said, "Here, run with this." So because of that, because he's running with an ice cream maker, he has become known as Ice Cream Maker Guy, and to say he has a cult following is almost an understatement. People dress up as him at conventions. A lot of people dress up as him at conventions. There's even people who dress up as the ice cream maker. So yes, he's become quite popular, and even the ice cream maker device has been reused in The Mandalorian as a safe box, which kind of explains probably why he was carrying it in continuity. So hey, way to go, Jon Favreau, for coming up with a reason for this to be there. That's actually really, really cool. And Ice Cream Maker Man, Ice Cream Maker Guy, Wilro Hood, did eventually get an action figure because of all of this fan demand, because a character running in the background holding an appliance is really, really funny. And whether he's a guy who's actually serving ice cream or Dole Whip or Frosty Freeze to Denzians of Cloud City, or he's just a guy who is an extra in a movie, either way, it was enough to catch fans' attention and eventually trickle down to Hasbro, where an official figure was made, including his ice cream maker, which actually has a Rebel insignia at the bottom to show that he was carrying Rebel plans or something. So hey, Wilro Hood, we got him. The next up is a figure that's a bit of a carrot on a stick, one that was kind of dangled in front of fans, and they were told that, well, you can see it, but you can't have it. And of course, nothing makes fans salivate more when we can't have something, and we're told that. Of course we say we want it. So the character I'm talking about is none other than the librarian from the Jedi Temple that we meet in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, Jocasta Nu. And she came up in a Q&A with Hasbro, where a fan asked Hasbro if there's any figure that they would never make. And Hasbro said, well, we'd probably never make Jocasta Nu. She's a librarian, she's a female, she's elderly, but she's pretty badass when it comes to protecting her books, according to the comic books. But yeah, she was listed by Hasbro as a figure that they would never make. And of course, what does that do? It now causes the fan base to scream, well, we want her now! There was always demand for her, but once you tell the fan base they can't have her, well, that basically just doubles down on the amount of energy fans are going to put into demanding a figure get made. And because of this negative response from Hasbro, or not negative response, but saying that she will never be made, of course, now she has to be made. So they did make her. They made her not only as a figure, but she got the deluxe treatment, coming with a bust of Count Dooku, which is in the library behind her. That's actually in the movie. And she was released in a deluxe gift pack where she was carded, as well as with the extra accessory next to her, so that she'd be part of the vintage series and was exclusive to Brian's Toys. So hey, yeah, if you want a fan base to want something, just tell them they can't have it, and suddenly they'll start asking for it a lot. So there we go. Jocasta Nu made it as a toy, despite being said she would never make it as a toy. Hey, everyone needs a librarian to keep track of their toy line. All right, next up, we're going back to Bespin real quick. So these are the Bespin guards, the guys that work on Lando's personal staff and keep the peace, if you will. And we had two Bespin guards in the vintage line. We had this Caucasian guy with a mustache and a blaster, and we had this African-American guy with a no mustache and a blaster. He was actually the only other black character in the vintage line except for Lando. Well, Lando did have 3 different figures, but he's the only other original character who is black in the vintage line, or the original line. The modern line has had several Bespin guards, and starting with the carbon freezing chamber playset, which came with this like cartoony looking guy. This is one of the more animated looking, non-animated figures that's been in the line. I don't know, something about his face, and he just kind of looks odd. Then we got our first carded one in terms of this figure from Power of the Jedi, who came loaded with accessories and a removable helmet. You know, he had a baton, and he even had handcuffs for, I don't know, S&M play or something. Well, no, he's a cop. What are you going to say? Cops should have handcuffs. And he was the very first Asian figure made. And yes, he is based on a character from the film. There's an Asian guard behind Lobot there when they're coming out to meet Han on the docking bay. We next got a Cloud City wing guard in the form of a twofer, where we got an African-American black guard and we got an alien guard. They were released within not the same wave, but in subsequent waves where they just did a head swap. And that way you got to use the body twice and just tool up two different heads and release it twice. Now, the alien character was not in the movie. He is in some of the behind-the-scenes books and some of the coffee table books, like the Chronicles book, but he didn't make the final cut. The African-American guy, well, there's obviously African-American actors playing Cloud City guards, but don't look too closely at this one because this was actually clearly a Caucasian guy that they just painted at the last minute African-American. If you look at that face, those are clearly not African-American features like the vintage figure had. All right, so now getting to this guy. Why do fans want this particular guard? This guy with kind of chubby cheeks and a mustache going around his lips and down. Well, that's because in the vintage line, this is the character that was made as the Bespin guard, the white Bespin guard. Now, while the picture on the card back showed a different Bespin guard, one who had a full beard and mustache and, mutton chops, etc., the actual figure only had a mustache. And there is reference for a Bespin guard that only has a mustache, that actually does have a bit of a chubby face. So while this figure existed in the vintage line, it is one of a only tiny handful of figures that have yet to be done in the modern line. So while we've gotten quite a few Bespin guards, from the cartoony to different ethnicities, even aliens, for fans who want all the figures from the vintage line recreated in the modern line, this is one that's a holdout. And that's why it gets a lot of fan requests to get made, and why you've never heard of this character who's on screen for half a second marching behind a stormtrooper. Yet he gets so many fans online asking and asking for him because, hey, you make it into the vintage line and you've made it into Star Wars history. All right, wrapping up, we go to Jabba's palace, and I've mentioned how fans like to collect segments and sets. Well, Jabba's palace, much like the cantina, is another one of those sets where people like to have dioramas. And a subset of Jabba's palace are the Skiff guards. So there's two Skiffs, the prisoner Skiff and the guard Skiff. The prisoner Skiff, the one with our heroes, has very specific characters. This is mine from my office. We like to display that way. So here's a snapshot from the movie of what I was recreating, and all of the characters on this Skiff have been made except one. Well, what do you think that's caused fans to do? Well, this is Velkern Tezeri, if I'm pronouncing that right. So he is the human Skiff guard that is on the prisoner Skiff, the one that's got our Luke, Han, and Chewie on it. And all of the alien Skiff guards have been made. The driver, the different Skiff leaders, guard leaders, but it's basically an incomplete set. Again, it's like having a chessboard, but you're missing a bishop on one side. It just screams at you, something's not here, something's not here. Now, this character, Velkin, has shown up in other shots. He was in the Rancor pit, and he's kind of in the background when they're bringing in Han and Chewie before Jabba. So he does get a little bit of screen time. But his time on the Skiff is what people look at because he completes the prisoner Skiff. And that's why there has been actually a very vocal campaign to get him made. So that subset of Skiff guards on the prisoner Skiff, the hero Skiff, can finally be made and people can have a full set. Well, those are action figures, or rather characters, that make action figure collectors drool that you've never heard of, or probably never heard of. Well, if you're a toy fan, you've heard of them. Did I miss anyone? Leave them in the comments below. Let me know. I'm sure there's one or two out there that I didn't cover, like Slimaloo. Subscribe to this channel, give it a like, because that tells YouTube to share it with more people, and that's what it's all about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.